Hey, everybody. Welcome to tonight's Late Night Happy Hour here. Brian Kamenetzky and Andy Kamenetzky, joined shortly by Jovan Buha from The Athletic. He, of course, covers the Clippers.
No, he doesn't cover a winning team, Brian.
No.
Like, he doesn't cover a team that's still in the playoffs.
Like a Western Conference Finals team? No.
Yeah, he doesn't. Jovan doesn't cover one of those type of teams.
Nope. I bet he wishes he did. There he is. There he is, a guy who does not cover a team that is in the Western Conference Finals. And even more exciting, Jovans Mom. Can we get Jovan's mom all the way there? It's Norma, Jovan's mom. Can you hear us okay? We can't see you yet.
Yeah, I'm putting my grandson to sleep to bed.
Oh,
there you are.
Well, if you wouldn't mind, putting your grandson somewhere else.
Yeah.
Oh, hey, buddy.
Say hi.
How are you?
Hi.
I'm not going to lie. We did not expect this, and frankly, we both
Neither did I.
we both kind of feel like heels, to be totally honest, doing this.
I didn't realize the kid was going to have to stay up later because of this. We just thought it would be fun because the last time we had Jovan on, you kind of joined the chat, and it was really kind of fun, and we had a good time with it. And I was like, oh, maybe we should just see if she can pop on and say hi, like as the show gets going. And here you are. You guys, I don't know how the last time you guys spoke was. Jovan, any messages for mom? You want to say hi? How is everything?
We just spoke an hour ago, but
okay.
No, we didn't speak. He cut me off.
Oh, do tell. Spill some tea.
Yeah. I'm busy. I'm making dinner. Gotta go. Bye.
No.
You spoke to your mother like that with that tone?
I'm going to go the athlete route and say no comment here.
Wow, Jovan. This is your mother. Like, this is the woman who raised you, Jovan.
Well, now you know why he's the way he is.
Yeah, I mean, seriously. Nino's last points out, wow, Jovan.
I had to eat, make dinner, get ready for the show, do my hair. It was the priorities. It was the priorities.
I mean,
no,
dinner's...
I'm kidding. He's he's very lovely. He wrote, "Sorry, Mom." Actually, sorry, Mom. I had to get off. I had to get ready. He was actually. I'm just ribbing. I'm just being.
Is there a fifth phone or device that we can use to put the grandson on? Like, so we can have a fifth square?
we are able to do that. We can put as many people.
No, there's only one. Here, sit here.
Okay. How many more relatives does Jovan have that we can get on the phone with?
Hey,
bud.
How are you?
Hi, Daddy.
Hi.
How are you?
Good.
Tell them what you were playing today.
I don't know. Soccer.
Soccer. Did you get a goal? How many goals?
2.
Very cool.
That is really good.
We'll let everybody go to bed because people got to get some sleep.
You never got my game.
I'm getting put on blast here.
Yeah, it's been a tough beginning for you there, Yo. All right,
thank you very much for joining. That was fun.
Say good night, everyone.
Say good night.
Say nice
good night.
Nice meeting you.
Nice meeting you too.
Very good manners. Thank you. Have a good sleep.
Good night.
All right. Thank you, Norma.
Norma.
Am I being signed off?
Yeah.
I mean, unless the kid can put himself to bed.
Oh, no, he can. He can. No, I thought it was going to be the Norma hour. What are we going to talk about? No, I'm very proud of my son. I really am.
You should be.
He works harder than anyone I know. So
works harder than the team he covered in the last series.
Oh, no comment.
Yeah. The only thing we don't like about Jovan is that.
Is what?
The only thing what, Brian?
It's for us.
Okay, you were cutting in and out, so we didn't hear you.
Oh, he's
very
close.
Pregnant pause.
I get it. I said this is a first.
Oh wow.
Yeah, you're gonna have to get up. You're gonna have to get up and move to the better spot on your table where the internet
Yeah.
actually works. So anyway, Jovan Buha covers the Clippers for The Athletic, and I want to set some ground rules before we start getting into this conversation, because we know, the largest chunk of our audience is definitely Laker fans, and Laker fans, I think it is safe to say, have enjoyed this premature Clippers collapse, and that means the jokes are going to be coming all over our chat, and we are all for that. And if the jokes are good, we will post those jokes. But we want to make something clear. Jovan covers the Clippers. Jovan does not actually work for the Clippers. He is not actually a Clipper. He did not play for the Clippers. Jovan did not collapse while covering these teams. Therefore, the jokes should not be about Jovan. They should be about the Clippers. So let's do all of this accordingly.
Can I say one thing to all the Laker fans? It's great, but it isn't over yet. We saw what Denver can do, so don't be making too many jokes just yet, because the fat lady has not yet sung.
Okay, now when you say we, Norma, do you say we as in we all saw this, or we as in Norma the Laker fan, like I'm with you, I saw this?
No, we as all of us.
Okay.
Because it's to the Clippers lost, but that doesn't mean that Denver's not going to do the same thing to the Lakers that they did to the Clippers.
And we'll definitely get into that.
Okay, well, I'm going to let you guys go. I love you guys so much.
And we were so excited that you followed us after the last show. So
yeah, then I kind of fell off because I had other things going on. But I commend your mom, because look at this. How wonderful is this? So
the next time she's in town, we'll get you guys together.
Oh yeah, why don't we get the next time you do Jovan, get your mom, and then it'll be a whole hour on raising son.
I don't know if our mom would actually do this. I think she'd be very, very nervous about coming on. I don't think she trusts us well enough not to steer her into trouble, but we'll see. We'll see. We'll keep it open.
Thank you so much for coming on and
thank you. And I'm sorry for taking up so much time. Say good night.
No.
Good night.
Good night. All right, that was awesome. That was fantastic.
We didn't tell you about that. Sorry, we just thought it was kind of funny.
It's all good.
All right, so Jovan, I guess the first question everyone is wondering, what went wrong? How did we end up here and not getting the Western Conference Finals that, quite frankly, we've been promised?
Yeah, I think it was a perfect storm for the Clippers in that, I know Laker fans were kind of making fun of some of the quotes post game, but I do kind of buy into the notion that this team kind of ran out of time. And, although there's been talks about, Lakers were kind of a new team and some of these other teams, Miami had a bunch of new pieces. And I think you can, when comparing them to other teams, kind of fall into that. I do think the Clippers, with PG missing, 20 plus games, with Kawhi on the injury management program, missing games here and there, and then with them making some moves around the deadline and kind of reshuffling the rotation, they had only had 10 games as this unit going into the hiatus. And then you start the seeding games in Orlando, and they had 7 guys either arrive late or leave the bubble at some point, which I think was the most of any team. I mean, I know Denver had some injuries and some guys arrived late, but I'm pretty sure the Clippers had the most turnover in the bubble overall. Obviously, Lou Williams, goes to Magic City, and but you had a guy in Montrezl Harrell, 6th man of the year, miss a month due to his grandmother getting sick and eventually passing. And I just felt it, all those things together, this team just never had the on-court reps that they should have at that point in the season. And look, part of that's bad luck. Part of that is on them for, Doc has never been a heavy practice team. And, they did have the injury management program for Kawhi. And they did sometimes, if a guy was nicked up, maybe they wouldn't play him or put him back in a game. And I think all that, those possessions, those minutes ended up adding up and costing them at the end, because I think if you watched it, they were right there. They had the 3-1 lead. They had double-digit leads in games 5, 6, and 7, but they just collapsed. And it was, pretty jarring to see this team have no answer for what Denver was throwing at them. And frankly, to me, just looked like a group that, sometimes at their worst, they look like a team of 5 talented players that you would see at a pickup game, just kind of playing together, trying to figure it out on the court. And sometimes it worked because they had the talent, and sometimes it didn't. And ultimately, Denver was the more resilient team. They never gave up in any of those games. And, I think the Clippers just kind of collapsed and fell apart at the end.
I mean, the Trez thing is, it's hard because the lateness too, like you said, was related to something just awful with his family. Does that account, do you think, for a lot of just how, relatively speaking, poor he was compared to the regular season version? Or, you know what I mean by regular season?
Yeah. Yes. I mean, I do think, one of the things I had been saying since the preseason was I had concerns with sort of the structure of the team with regards to Trez and Lou. Because for as good as those guys were off the bench, there was a reason they were coming off the bench. And that was because they were relatively limited outside of their scoring. And, with Lou, we know he's not a good defender. That's the main reason he's come off the bench for most of his career. And with Trez, he can be this jolt of energy for you off the bench, but he's 6'7", and he's a below average rebounder. He's not really a rim protector. So I always felt that looking at the closing lineups of you're in a close playoff game, 7-8 minutes left, who are the Clippers trotting out there? And if it's Lou and Trez, you have 2 defensive minuses out there. And for as good as Kawhi and PG and whoever that third guy is, Pat Beverly or Marcus Morris, whoever, they could only do so much defensively. And I thought you saw that at times in the Dallas series, in the Denver series, and even in, for example, that Lakers game back in March, which feels like forever ago, LeBron hunted Lou Williams. Yeah. He even kind of hunted Trez a little bit on the pick and roll. And you saw Dallas and Denver have effect, be very effective with those actions. So I felt the Clippers, too late kind of adjusted to, benching those 2 guys at the end of games. You did see some more Ivica Zubats in the playoffs. You saw some more JaMychal Green, some more Pat Beverly. But I felt at that point, those 2 guys were so entrenched in the closing rotation that it was hard for Doc to just be like, I'm not going to roll with you guys. And, he had limited Trez's minutes until game 7. Then all of a sudden he plays almost double the minutes of Zubats. And it was like, Zubats, frankly, was the Clippers' 3rd or 4th best player in the bubble. He had a kind of, multiple breakout performance, multiple double-doubles. And so I do think, to your point about Trez, missing a month, he was not as explosive. He was not as athletic. The numbers, he averaged 2.9 rebounds. He was one of the worst defensive players in the playoffs. He was just not himself. And I do think the rebounding and defense would have been an issue, but then he just wasn't scoring. And without the scoring, he just wasn't effective.
One thing that was interesting to me, and it kind of occurred to me when the Clippers were up 3-1 and they hadn't blown it all the way yet, but you could see the momentum starting to shift, and you could see Denver, really starting to look like they might be capable of pulling that upset. It kind of dawned on me that, the Clippers were a good team, and that was not a fluke. But that being said, they had these inconsistencies all season. They'd had a very disjointed season, guys in and out of the lineup. And there had been this benefit of the doubt given to them that there was this, switch that they could flip and another gear that they could get to, that I understand why the benefit was there. But typically teams that don't have a template, and they didn't have one like this group together, don't get that type of benefit. I think they got more of a benefit of the doubt in terms of a next level they could go to than the Lakers did, even though the Lakers on balance were better than them all season. And I guess what I'm wondering is, A, do you think we all collectively misjudged that? And B, how much do you think inside the locker room they may have misjudged how attainable that next level was and how easy it was for them to get there?
Well, I think hindsight is obviously 2020. So I think we did misjudge it. It's weird though, because, I thought not enough was given to how good they actually were on paper. It wasn't just like an eye test thing of, you have Kawhi, you have PG, you have Lou and Trez.
Right.
Like on paper, number 2 offense, number 5
Sure.
defense. They had a better net rating than the Lakers. Lakers had the better record. They had a better net rating. And those have been traditionally markers you look at for a championship contender. And, I felt so they weren't as consistent by any means as the Lakers, but I felt when you saw them at their best, they beat the Lakers a couple times. They beat the Raptors, Celtics, Heat, yada, yada. They beat everybody. So I felt it was just like, can this team ever have that continuity and that bill of health? And I do think in retrospect, they might have been one of the teams more affected by the hiatus. They beat everybody into the break. They were 10-1. They were the hottest team in the league. The one loss was the Lakers loss.
Right.
But aside from that, they steamrolled Denver by 30 at home. They went into Houston, beat them by 20. Like they were just, blowing out everybody except the Lakers. So I think there's an alternate universe where maybe COVID doesn't happen. And
that was my question. That was going to be my question.
Maybe they ride that momentum. Again, everyone had to stay healthy, which was no guarantee with this team. But based on, them being healthy at that point, the way they were playing, I think they finally were gelling and putting it together. Just the break happened, and they had this campaign, Win the Weight. They sent all the workout equipment to all the guys, and they're having the weekly Zoom workouts and stuff. So like you kind of thought they would look like the Heat do right now, where it looks like the Heat were practicing every day during the pandemic. But
maybe they were. We heard about all these secret Laker workouts.
And again, you had. Pat missed time and get injured in the beginning of the playoffs. You did have Lou miss time. You had Trez miss time. Zubats, Landry Shamet, Marcus Morris, like all these guys arrived late to the bubble. So, you don't want to put it on that, but, and some of those guys had COVID and we're still kind of figuring out what the effects of that actually were. So, I'm not making excuses for them by any means. I just think when trying to diagnose it, I mean, yes, they choked. Like you can't deny that, but I think there were several factors that went against them that ultimately led to that. And the biggest one just being the continuity. Like, one of the more interesting things was I think they only had 5 lineups that played over 20 minutes this season, which is just like insane. I could be wrong on that. Or maybe 50 minutes somewhere. I mean, that is a big difference. But if you actually look at like the lineup continuity, and I think 3 of their 5 lineups featured players that aren't on the team or in the rotation. So like there just was a lack of continuity. And then at the end of the day, like I thought Kawhi clearly ran out of gas in the last 2 games. Game 7, couldn't make a shot. There's that one clip of him going at Monte Morris in transition, and he can't get by Monte Morris. And it's like, if you can't get by Monte Morris, what are we doing here? Like, so, and I think internally, I would say yes, that there was I don't think the Clippers were necessarily as cocky as they were made out to be. That was kind of the rep on them. I do think they're a confident bunch, and there was an attitude of like, hey, we don't need home court. We just need to be healthy by playoff time, and we could beat anybody under any circumstance. Clearly that wasn't the case. But I guess probably yes. Like again, in retrospect, that they were probably a little bit overconfident, but I don't think it was as much as they were portrayed at times in the media.
Okay.
What do you think they feel about, because we have this question here, because I had that same kind of Earth 2 question about what happens if there's no pandemic and they don't have to stop. And this is kind of related to that from Manoli Monti. Who do you think won't be back next season? Do they try as much as possible with that in mind, just to run it back and see if you can get continuity with the same group? Or do you think you need to make structural changes there?
It's interesting because we haven't seen this front office in this scenario yet. We've seen them in the building to a title contender mode, and they've been very aggressive. You look, they've made multiple trades each of the last 3 seasons. They've been one of the most active teams at the trade deadline. So going off of that, like history kind of suggests, I feel like they will be aggressive. And while I think there was some fluky elements to their collapse, I also think it exposed this team was not as deep as they were said to be. And I think some of that depth was not as flexible or versatile. If you look at it, really, their 5 best defenders were their starters, and there was a big drop off from the starting unit to the bench in terms of defense. The bench was very offensive heavy, but all those guys came up short in the bubble. So really by the end of Game 7, Doc was relying on 5-6 guys, and still playing as 8 or 9, but you could only count on 5 or 6 of those. So to get to who I don't expect to be back, they have some. I mean, they don't have any cap space. So at best, we're looking at.
They don't have a ton of flexibility.
They don't, and they don't have any picks. So really, you're looking at, if you want to get something done, it's got to be like Pat Beverly or Lou Williams plus like Landry Shamet or Ivica Zubats as like an enticing young player, maybe depending on what you're using them for, and kind of packaging 2 of those 4 to hope you can get like a role player upgrade maybe. They can't trade their pick till 2021. So, you don't have any future picks to trade. I would say that I think depending on who they can get, like I look at someone like Goran Dragic right now with the Heat, where he's a free agent, and the Heat are, looking at 2021 for Giannis. So if you're the Clippers, do you throw him a 2 or 3 year deal at the MLE and hope that Miami doesn't want to take on that money past next season? And I think Goran Dragic is someone that would fit great. He could either replace Lou or replace Pat as the starter, move Pat to the bench, which I think Pat and Lou work well together. So I think they're going to look at guys like, Serge Ibaka, Marc Gasol, what's happening in Toronto. Could they maybe upgrade that Trez position? Jay Crowder's another guy who's going to be a free agent. Like, the other thing is this free agent class is not that good. So,
it's pretty bad. Trez is really one of the best. As much as Trez hurt himself in the bubble, he's still one of the best guys out there, no question.
Yeah. So I suspect Marcus Morris is going to be a priority for them. They gave up a first-round pick to get him. He was pretty good for them in the bubble, kind of found his way, found his groove, shot almost 48% on threes in the playoffs. I think he's going to be back. I think JaMychal Green, who has a player option for $5 million, could get more than that and might opt out. If he does, I expect them to re-sign him. I think where it gets tricky is Trez, and his value is kind of in the eye of the beholder. Some conversations I just reported today on The Athletic that some people I was talking to were saying they kind of peg him in that 8 to 12 million range, which is a far cry from December. I reported he was looking at maybe 20 million annually, 18 to 20 million. Depending on would have been a smaller market team, probably a shorter term contract. But,
damn, though.
He was looking like if you were looking at the Asian class.
I get it, but 20 mil for a 6-man, like that's a lot.
I think at the time his value was higher clearly than it was now, but
even at his peak, like 20 mil for Montrezl Harrell sounds like a lot. He's better than he was in the bubble.
But that just feels like the kind of deal that 2 hours after you sign it, you're like, that's probably not a good idea.
Well, I don't think it's happening now. I don't think that's happening now. But I think one of the more interesting things you have to answer if you're the Clippers is Doc Rivers said the Dallas series was not really a Trez series, and that their length, Porzingis, Boban, Maxi Kleber, that was a tough series for him. He kind of implied the same thing with the Denver series and reduced his minutes until Game 7. So I'm just looking at it like, what is going to be a Trez series in the West? Is it Anthony Davis? Is it Rudy Gobert? Like, if you look at the guys they're going to have to go through,
Houston.
Houston could cover them. But you got Anthony Davis, you got Rudy Gobert, you got Nikola Jokic, you got Kristaps Porzingis, you got maybe Minnesota makes a jump, and now you got Karl Anthony Towns in the playoffs. Like, the West is loaded with elite centers. And
for all the talk of the death of the center, like the West has some guys to deal with in the middle.
So and I'm just like, okay, so if you're concerned about his playoff matchups right now, are you willing to commit a multi-year deal at probably somewhere in that 10, 12, 13 million range? And can he close and be, because I think one of the things is, maybe you readjust his role a little bit and say like, hey, Zubats is our closer now, or JaMychal Green's our closer now, and we're going to kind of switch it up. But I don't know if he goes for that. Like, he could probably get similar money elsewhere and have the same or even a bigger role potentially, depending on the team. So I think if you're the Clippers, you really have to take a long, hard look at, what does Trez look like around Kawhi and PG? Is this an aberration? I think it was offensively, but I think the rebounding and defense are always going to be concerns. And had they played the Lakers, I think, you would have seen similar things.
Really, really quick, just because we were talking about Harrell, this is an interesting question, I think, actually, that I would imagine teams would be thinking about across the league if you're interested in him as a free agent, that I think is really unique to Harrell himself. What is he like without Lou Williams? I mean, because when the Clippers got him as part of that deal, I mean, from everything I heard, they liked his potential, but I don't know. There was not an expectation that he would have this type of impact that he's had with the Clippers. And he had this type of impact and this type of chemistry very specifically with Lou. And I have nothing else. I think that's a sort of an interesting question that GMs around the league would have to think about.
And Doc has actually said they were thinking of cutting Trez after they got him in that deal, and that it took them a couple of scrimmages to see what he could do. And they had those, open runs during the summer, and they were like, this guy can play. Like, I don't know why Houston wasn't playing him. And you do look at like kind of Houston and what ended up happening there. And it was like, imagine if they had Trez and Lou and Pat and how good, they've been for the Clippers. But I think to your point, this season, we did see Trez branch out a bit from Lou. The last 2 seasons, they were very tethered together, and, their minutes were not as tethered this year. You did see instances in which Trez was the closing 5 and Lou wasn't on the floor, and him still be effective. He ran pick and rolls really well with Kawhi and PG. So I do think, while they do have this special chemistry, they kind of even lost it this year, to be honest. Like, if you look at, their pick and roll points per possessions, like, it was not the same as the last couple seasons. And it really got negated in the postseason. They had no pick and roll play together. So, that brings me to Lou, who I think is the other one that you have to look at, and, averaged, 12 points a game, shot 26% on threes. And this is not an aberration for him, where if you look at his playoff career, 12 points a game, 3 assists, 39% shooting, 25% 3-point shooting. I just wrote about like 8 out of 9 years has decreased in points, has decreased in assists, decreased in 3-point percentage. Like, this is a thing with Lou, where teams will put guys 6'5", 6'6", 6'7" on him. They'll bother him, and he's just not been as effective. So if you're kind of putting him as your third guy or third or fourth guy, like, I think you have a ceiling there. And I don't, I don't know that he can be that effective. And again, he was a guy who missed time in the bubble, so I don't know how much of it was that. But when you just look at his track record, he has not been good in the playoffs. Like, last year, he was the go-to guy. It was a little bit different, although he had some wild home road splits. I don't know if you remember that in that series. Like, he was terrible at Staples, but really good at Oracle, and that's why they won 2 games there. But
they have good wings out in the Bay Area.
But so for me, I do think it's probably time for them to move on from Trez or Lou. I would strongly consider moving on from both, but I think that might be too big of a shock for their culture, their ecosystem. Like, it might not be realistic to move on from both, but I do think that having 2, offensive guys who can be limited because of their size and don't provide much on the defensive end as, 2 of your top 4 guys, I just don't think, if you look at the Lakers makeup, you look at the Nuggets, you look at the Heat, you look at the Celtics, like, they don't have those types of guys really. I guess Kemba is like the one exception, but he's an all-star level scorer. So, that's kind of an exception there. But I think the Clippers have to look hard at the roster. I think they're close. Obviously, again, we're top 5 in multiple things, and we're right there. But I do think they're going to have to make some tweaks.
All right. So the
answer, by the way, Mohizi, dang, I'm late. Did I miss all the lemon pepper Lou jokes? We've got time.
Yeah, there's going to be
I mean, throw them all out. It'll be fine. We will never get bored with lemon pepper Lou. So by all means, throw them out.
Will ever get bored with lemon? I've never seen a guy who just didn't seem to care about like the jokes and the memes and stuff. He's like, it's fine. You gotta
Lou seemed to have no regrets whatsoever about that decision to go to Magic City.
Lou Williams has had people making fun of him or making jokes about a lot more exotic stuff than where he gets his lemon pepper wings. I mean, this is not new for him.
Lou is pretty comfortable being Lou. He is among the most comfortable athletes in his own skin I've ever seen.
Yeah, I don't worry about Lou getting too self-conscious about these things.
No, Lou might come into the chat and make some of the jokes. Like, I really don't think he cares.
So, obviously, the Clippers were up 3-1. The Lakers are up 2-1. But if you look at it, the Lakers have been, Denver's been the better team for the last, 5 quarters, 6 quarters. Throw out a little part of the fourth quarter in game 2. You throw out part of the fourth quarter in game 3. You've seen how this movie ended for the Clippers, and you've seen what the Nuggets are starting to do, at least of late. Should the Lakers be concerned with what's happening, trend wise?
A little bit. I mean, I'm not, I'm at like concern level 3 or 4, like not that high.
I do say, how many numbers does it go up to?
It goes up to 4.
Because I mean, like DEFCON 5, we're close.
I'm at out of 10.
Okay.
So
okay.
I would say that the 2 things that Denver has done that I've noticed, I've watched all 3 games. They've really packed the paint on the Lakers shooters, and that was something they did against the Clippers. Of even guys that were above average shooters, they were kind of like, we're going to dare you to burn us, and we're going to load up the paint and really put all our attention on Kawhi and PG, and then in this case, LeBron and AD. So I do think they've been more effective defensively in the half court, and you've seen the Lakers have more success, obviously getting out in transition, forcing turnovers when they went zone in that second half there, fourth quarter. And the other thing is, I think the Jokic Murray pick and roll, like it seemed to get stronger in the Clippers series, where you saw them kind of throw different looks at the Nuggets, and it was like they kind of knew what the Clippers were doing before they did it, and they had an answer for everything. And I feel like that's what I've kind of noticed so far in this series is, again, like kind of game 1 was a feel out process, but game 2 and 3, they've looked a lot more comfortable running that. And, with the way Jokic is shooting, that's kind of been the thing that's changed that, because he was a capable 3-point shooter, but now that he's shooting mid 40s on threes, it's like he's basically Dirk out there offensively. And with that guy popping, it is really hard to defend that action. So, one thing that the Clippers did, I think too late in the series, was switch off Ivica Zubac and put Kawhi or PG or Marcus Morris on Jokic, and then have that guy switch on to Murray and just switch that action and kind of hope you don't get burned. With AD, the Lakers obviously are pretty well equipped to do a bunch of things defensively, and he could switch on to Murray. But, maybe you look at putting LeBron or Kyle Kuzma or someone like that, Markieff Morris on Jokic to switch that action and just kind of stick with Murray. Because if you give them an opening, Murray's pulling up, Jokic is popping into 7 feet away to a wide open 3. Like, they've been in such sync right now that I just think the Lakers are going to have to figure that out defensively, because that's only going to get worse, I think.
Yeah, they've been really willing for a while to switch whatever with Jokic. I mean, you'll see like KCP or Caruso or guys who are considerably smaller than Jokic, and at times they've been able to get away with it, and I think they've timed their doubles really well and have scrambled and recovered well. But I think what really starts opening it up for trouble for the Lakers with Denver is when you see Jamal Murray in playmaking mode on top of the other things. And you've got I saw somebody in the chat talk about this yesterday when we were wrapping up the game with Matt Moore. You essentially have 2 point guards on the floor, like 2 really good point guards who are multi-threat point guards. I mean, it's essentially like picture LeBron running a pick and roll with LeBron. Like, that's really, really difficult to try to guard. And I'm not saying Jokic and
Spider-Man meme style.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying that Jokic and Murray are at that type of level, but they can give you a lot of trouble when both of them are really looking to pull out all facets of their game. Hey, Tanya.
Tanya's here.
Tanya Ganguly.
We could send her the code and just keep inviting. Tanya may not know, we had Jovans Mom on earlier. So people are just popping onto the broadcast. But yes, Tanya, this is how you invade the broadcast like Dave did.
And she brought, by the way, Jovans Mom brought in a small child. And I mention this just because it trumps perhaps, at least to some people, Tanya bringing in her dog. Like, depending on whether you're a bigger fan of dogs or kids, Tanya might have gotten one-upped. I'm just saying.
Hi.
Hey, Tanya.
Hi, Tanya.
This is a big hangout for media people.
McMenamin's popped in.
We're the hotel at the W Marriott. You come here to get your points. The thing that's scary, I had the Lakers in 6. Andy had the Lakers in 6. I think everybody basically had the Lakers in 6. It's like the safest number. The thing that scares me, though, is like if you get into a 7th game with Denver, just because Jamal Murray can go nuclear, like you can play a fairly impeccable defensive game against Murray. And like what the Jazz saw was that there are going to be nights when he's standing 4 feet inside half court and just bombing 3-pointers, and there's nothing you can do about it. And so I think that's the part. And I don't think the Lakers are, complacent. They're look past them, but like you do kind of need to get out of this series without giving Denver a chance to eliminate you, because they've got that thing almost even more than like you worry about Kawhi going nuclear, Paul George going nuclear. Like it's a different kind of deal with a pure flat scorer like Murray. I think that would be the thing that scares me a little bit.
He did it in Game 7 against the Clippers. He had 40 points, and with their season on the line, they're throwing Kawhi at him, they're throwing PG at him, they're throwing Pat Bev at him, and he torched all of them. I think I think Jokic obviously is special, and he's kind of playing himself into that top 7, top 5 conversation. But Murray's the guy that really raises their ceiling, just because it's like, Jokic was kind of already at that level or close to it. Murray's the guy who's ascended now, where now, he hasn't been an all-star yet, but now he's playing, in that, I don't want to say Steph, but like maybe that kind of Dame Kyrie level in these playoffs. And had we known he was going to play like that, I think people would have looked at Denver much differently.
Well, yeah, because to this point, it's been, how did you pay Jamal Murray that much? You can't pay. He's not that good. He's a 2nd-tier guy. Nobody says that anymore. I think he has ascended. Are you at all surprised that Denver's outplayed the Lakers in the last? I mean, really, I'd say if Anthony Davis doesn't hit the buzzer beater, then the Lakers are losing.
I think as the underdog, that's the backbreaker, right? Like, if for the Nuggets, I think to win this series, they kind of had to win that game too. Like that's the game. That's one of those games you have to get. Like any chance you have when you're the heavy underdog, I think you got to win. A little bit. Like I do think that one of the bigger things that surprised me in the Clippers series was, similar to the Dallas series. It was on paper, okay, Dallas has the best offense of all time, but defensively, they were 18th in the league in defense, and they just couldn't stop the Clippers. And on paper, Denver was 15th in defense, and it was going to be kind of a similar thing where I was like, okay, Jokic and Murray are going to be tough to game plan for. They're going to get theirs offensively, but defensively, I mean, Jokic is not really a rim protector. And, Jeremy Grant, Gary Harris, solid defenders, Paul Millsap, like they have some defensive pieces, but they are kind of playing 2 guys that you can attack in Jokic and Murray on the other end. And that just hasn't been the case. They've done a really good job game planning, packing the paint, controlling the glass. I think defensively is where they've probably surprised me the most, because again, I know AD's been really effective. LeBron's had his triple doubles, but aside from those 2, like I think they have done a really good job of limiting the other Lakers.
Denver last year had moments where they started to build up, and then earlier this year they really they hit a wall defensively where they got much worse. Whatever it was, a 15-20 game stretch going into the bubble, and then once they got there, but at the beginning of the year, part of what made them so competitive and made them seem like they were different was that the Nuggets they can score, but now they're also playing defense. I think the West becomes fascinating because you're right. The Clippers are going to be good again. It's not like they're going anywhere. And then, Dallas is absolutely up and coming. Denver can still get better. The Lakers aren't going to get, worse with what they've got. The only team that really is sort of stuck that you look at and say is Houston. But, Utah was playing this without Bogdanovich, and Donovan Mitchell's getting better. Like, it's not going to get any easier in the West going forward.
I think the Warriors are going to be back next season.
Oh, right, and I always forget that.
Like, I would put them right there with the two LA teams. Honestly, like, I mean, we'll see how they build out the rest of the roster, but if Steph is Steph again, which we haven't seen him without KD in a few years now. We got to see what shape Clay is in and Draymond, and they are kind of some unknowns there. Those guys have now entered their early 30s, but if those three are back to being 2016 version or close to that, that team, even with compromised depth, I think is right there.
Yeah, I mean, the Thunder are one of the only high-profile teams that really could end up getting considerably worse, because it looks they're signaling like they're going in the blow-it-up direction, like a full rebuild. But just about everybody else is, if nothing else, looking to get better in the West. I mean, they're really in any – I can't think of any other team that doesn't seem like they're actually looking to get better, as opposed to, just doing – some version of the process or whatever. Question from Trojan Williams. Is this the best Kuzma we get in the series? I vote yes. It depends on how you define best, but in terms of the scoring, I don't know, man. We're 3 rounds into this thing, and Kuzma has not been the scoring presence that, if nothing else, he's got the reputation for being. I mean, his scoring this year has been inconsistent up and down anyway. But he's always been thought of as that guy who, in theory, could be the prototypical third banana on a championship team. And he's done some really good things defensively. And, he's been playing hard, and I think he's often been playing smart and active. But the scoring isn't there. And I wonder if I guess I question whether or not it's coming throughout these playoffs at all. Like, if it hasn't arrived now, it could still get there. But, he hasn't hit any type of consistent groove, even just over a couple games.
Yeah, and I wonder if it's affecting him at all, because I don't remember exactly how much time was left. It was like 2 or 3 minutes left in the game last night. He has that open 3 on the right wing and kind of, catches the ball, is wide open, hesitates a bit, kind of looks at it, like almost pump fakes no defender, and then goes up, shoots it, and misses. And it was like, that's a shot you just got to take in rhythm. We've seen him do that before, but I do wonder if some of the offensive struggles have kind of gotten to him a little bit, because that's just a shot that you're overthinking, not confident in. Kuzma is a confident player. I mean, we've seen that for sure. So
maybe he wears that mesh outfit that he wears.
A
confident person.
It's like him and Right Said Fred. I remember those guys used to run around in those mesh tops, like the netting tops. Like, it's basically those guys and Kuz. And again, you got to be confident.
You know what the B-side for the "I'm Too Sexy" single was by Right Said Fred?
This is great.
No,
it was "I'm Too Sexy" in Spanish. They just said, you know what, we're going to run it back.
when you got a hit, double down.
That's right. Soy tan sexy came in. And it was fantastic.
Yeah,
it's both brilliant and incredibly lazy at the same time, and I respect it deeply.
That was also them, I think, in on the joke. I think Right Said Fred realized, you know what, we have peaked right out of the gate. It's not getting any better. Let's ride it out. Like, if it ain't broke and there really is no other way to fix it better, let's just do this.
We got this wave we're riding.
Yeah, I mean, that was the wave. There was no other wave for Right Said Fred other than "I'm Too Sexy."
Yeah, I'm trying to think, like, what's the guy's name? Like, band that it doesn't matter, but like, they were not self-serious. They did not believe they weren't Nickelback. They didn't take themselves entirely too seriously for what they were. So I respected Right Said Fred. Anyway, somebody had a point to make. I forget what it was.
Kuzma,
yeah. I don't see it coming around. I could be wrong. I could be totally wrong, but I don't see it coming around.
This is the question, I think, from Mohisi. Do you package Kuz, and send him somewhere to a team that really could use him in the way that at the very least, that Kyle Kuzma envisions himself being used as a primary, or at the very least, a number 2 scorer. He's shown the ability to play a little bit of defense in the bubble, which I think helps him a lot. And if you're one of these teams that thinks, given an opportunity, that he could score, he's the only guy with any kind of real trade value. He's tricky to trade because he doesn't make a lot of money. But let's set aside the sort of the caponomics of it. Almost like the Lakers, the Clippers might want to think about moving Trez, moving Lou to try to get better. Do you move Kuzma? Because clearly they don't need Kuzma to do that third scorer thing for them to be successful.
Yeah, I mean, I think it just kind of depends on what you can get, right? I mean, he's confident.
Yes, this is from the bubble. This is actually from the bubble.
I would be confident too if I was dating. I'm just,
it's fair. I mean, I would say I wonder if at this point he might be more valuable to the Lakers than another team, and it kind of just depends. I mean, maybe some other team thinks there's untapped potential there offensively that you could unlock, and maybe you feature him as your second or third guy more heavily, and you can kind of unlock that. But I think honestly, he was kind of the guy that. I mean, I know there's been different reporting on it, but it sounded like he was the guy that the Lakers really wanted to keep in like the AD trade, or one of the guys. And they were kind of making certain guys untouchable, or didn't really want to include them. And so I think I just wonder if maybe he has more value to them, and they're better off just riding this out and kind of seeing, because he clearly has talent, right? Like, even if he's not the scorer that we kind of envisioned he could be, I still think he's a talented player. And if he does end up being kind of a 3-and-D wing with maybe some off the dribble, skill, and that's kind of like ultimately his role, that's still a valuable player, right, in his game. So it just kind of,
he's not, there's, the score, this, and all these other things. The part of the problem is he just can't be that here. And, everybody, like when he has these great games when AD's missing or LeBron's missing, everybody says, look at that. But like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how good Kyle Kuzma is when LeBron and AD aren't on the floor or aren't, playing, because they're going to be playing when they play in the playoffs and play important series. All that matters is how can you play when you're with those two guys. And, to his credit, I think Kuz has really embraced doing whatever it is that you need to do to win in the playoffs and help how he can. But it's not the role that, in theory, he's supposed to be playing. So I think you can find value for him. He's a little older than people think, and he's about to get paid, which I think is the biggest problem. But he's not needed to do what he wants, in LA. He just isn't. And as an aside, Andy, this is our third week with the relaunch show.
Third or fourth, something
like that. We have not had a background that works better for our late night happy hour watermark than Jovan's hair. It really pops.
Jovan with a haircut. You said that you got one recently. Was this today?
It was today. I mean, coincidentally, I felt like last time, even though I won the hair competition, it was not my best effort.
You smoked it. What are you talking about? You didn't just win.
I did, but I wasn't happy with my hair at that time. So I hadn't gotten a haircut in 2-3 months. So I had to come with a fresh cut.
It's a very Kobe-esque reaction. But I'm still not happy with the way that I won, and therefore I need to do better.
Well, I mean, it also speaks to the way that, like, even if the entire voting population finds you dreamy with the hair, if you don't feel dreamy, none of it matters. Like, I mean, ultimately, if you don't see yourself the way those voters see you, then it's all empty. It's all just hollow, the victory that you experienced, Jova. I feel bad that you weren't able to enjoy it, but I also feel good that the results ultimately prompted you to find the hair that you want. So it worked out well. It was bittersweet, the victory.
All I know is that when this pandemic is over, Jovan and Paolo Uggetti from The Ringer are going to fight.
Well, and poor Pedro Mora. I felt like Pedro because he was so early.
Right.
Pedro. Do the Cam brothers feel dreamy with their hair?
Shut up, Ray.
Well, I got to tell you, back in the day,
Oh, God.
I certainly did. I certainly did feel dreamy back in the day. Look at that. Look at that, Jovan.
That's a main.
That really was. Younger days.
Cautionary tale, Jovan.
It is a cautionary tale. Be grateful for what you have.
So I have a game. You guys want to play a game?
Yes.
Sure.
All right. Jovan Buha covers the Clippers, of course, for The Athletic, does a spectacularly good job. And you should always be reading his coverage. It's fantastic. Are they still doing the thing with the dollar subscription?
Yeah.
I mean, it's $1, people. I know times are lean and it's a pandemic. It's $1. You really should. I mean, it's great sports writing for $1. You might even see Kamenetzky brothers there every once in a while. But so go sign up for that. He covers the Clippers. We cover the Lakers. Now I have a game, and this is not who has more. It's who is higher on their own team's respective all-time list. So I would say points. Kobe Bryant or whoever leads the Clippers in points all time. I mean, it doesn't really matter. And you would say Kobe Bryant. Like I would say like that guy. So Kobe's number 1. I'd say somebody who's number 3 on the other team. So here's one for minutes. You tell me who is higher on their team's all-time list for minutes.
Okay.
Could be a tie, could be a Laker, could be a Clipper. Here we go.
Ties are a possibility?
Ties are a possibility. Again, we're not talking about quantity. We're talking about their placement on the all-time list. They could go to number 4.
Okay, so basically just
right.
Number 4 versus number 4.
Correct.
Even if number 4 on one team has like 5,000 more minutes. Okay, got it. All right.
There you go. Minutes. Byron Scott or Loy Vaught. Who is higher on their team's all-time top 10 list in minutes? Byron Scott or Loy Vaught?
Do we just blurt it out, or?
Well, each of you can guess.
Okay, I'll say Loy.
Andy?
It's got to be Byron Scott.
The answer is Loy Vaught.
What?
Loy Vaught is 6th all-time on the Clippers in minutes with 15,600.
Okay, I did this wrong in my head. Nobody stays with the Clippers long enough. There you go. All right.
3-pointers. That's what makes this tricky. 3-pointers. Nick Van Exel or Chris Paul. Who is higher on their team's all-time list for 3-pointers? Nick Van Exel or Chris Paul? Andy, you go first this time.
I am going to say
playing, by the way. If
I'm going to say, yeah, Tanya, if you're still here, you can play like McMenamin did last time.
That's right.
I'm going to say Chris Paul.
Okay.
Same.
The answer is Nick Van Exel. Nick Van
Exel,
3rd all time on the Lakers 3-point list with 7.
I wouldn't have thought that they took enough threes.
That's what I thought. Yeah. Chris Paul is 4th with 618. Jovan still leads 1-0. Assists, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar or Ron Harper? Kareem Abdul-Jabbar or Ron Harper? Who is higher on his team's respective all-time assists list? Kareem Abdul-Jabbar or Ron Harper? Jovan.
I'll go Ron Harper.
Andy?
I'm calling bullshit if it's not Kareem.
It's a tie. They're both 6th. Kareem has 3,652 assists. Ron Harper 1,463, but it's a tie.
Jesus, like what you have to do to rise the ranks in the Clippers versus the Lakers. I mean,
there's
come
one
on,
guy in history for the Clippers has played 10 seasons.
I know,
and he ain't there anymore.
No, he's not.
DeAndre is the only guy who lasted a decade. So, this is what we're dealing with here. Turnovers: James Worthy or Corey Maggette? Andy, James Worthy or Corey Maggette? Who is higher on his team's all-time list for turnovers?
I'm going to say Maggette.
Jovan? It is Corey Maggette. So 2-1. James Worthy had 1,859. That ranks him 4th. Corey Maggette is number 2 all-time Clippers. Steals: Derek Fisher or Elton Brand? Derek Fisher or Elton Brand? Andy?
Fish.
Same.
The answer is Derek Fisher. Fish is 7th. Elton Brand is 9th. We all remember Michael Olowokandi, the Canadian, one of the greatest first-round picks of all time.
University of the Pacific, baby.
That's right. Best basketball player they've produced. Michael Olowokandi versus Eldon Campbell. The category is blocks. Michael Olowokandi or Eldon Campbell. The category is blocks. Jovan, you go first.
I'll go Olowokandi.
Eldon
Campbell, absolutely. In a walk. Olowokandi was 6th, 527. Eldon Campbell 3rd, 1,000.
Oh, God. Do you know how bad you have to be blocking shots to be 7-1 and not be higher with the Clippers? Jesus.
I'm surprised Eldon was that high on the list. with how many big men the Lakers have had.
Like, Olowokandi should be ashamed of himself.
That's surprising about that for me, too. But he was there longer than you think. And that was
I know. That's part of my point. Like, Jesus.
No, I mean, Eldon. All right. I have to admit, I loved this category so much, I included 2. Triple doubles, Jerry West or Ron Harper. Who is higher on their team's list, Jerry West or Ron Harper? Andy, you go first.
I didn't even know they kept triple doubles in Jerry West day. I'm going to say Jerry West.
Jovan?
I'll go Ron.
It is Ron Harper. Ron Harper is 5th all time for the Clippers. He has 3. Jerry West had 16.
That's 5th.
The bonus. So one more for Jovan. The bonus question in triple doubles: Julius Randle or Jeff McInnes? Julius Randle or Jeff McInnes?
I know Jeff McInnes had the one good assist year with the Clippers.
Julius Randle or Jeff McInnes? Who had more career triple doubles? Who was higher? No, that's not true. Who is higher on his team's respective all-time list?
I'll go Julius.
I think it's Julius too.
Julius Randle had he is 9th for the Lakers. He had 5 triple doubles, really impressive. Jeff McInnes is 7th. He had 1. He is tied with 16 other Clippers with 1. All you needed to do is get 1 with the Clippers, and you are vaulted into the top.
Again, Michael Olowokandi should be ashamed of himself. Like, really.
That is one of my favorite statistics of all time. If you have a triple-double, you are tied for 7th all time in triple-double for the Clippers organization. I'm going to tweet that out in just a moment. All right, so it is 4-3, Jovan over Andy. The good news is this last question is worth 11.
Wow.
Yeah, I know.
Okay.
Random, but okay.
Free throws, Magic Johnson or Randy Smith? Magic Johnson.
This is makes or percentage?
Just makes. Free throw makes. Who has had more? Who made more free throws? Who is higher? Who's higher on their team's all-time list?
Sedano.
Actually, we could name the 15 others. I will do that when we're done.
George Sedano, I'm 8th on the Clippers all-time triple-double list.
That is truly one of the most stunning statistics I have ever seen. If you have a triple-double, you're in the top 10.
That's shocking.
I love it.
I'll go Randy Smith. Just
Andy?
keeping and picking the Clippers.
Magic.
Oh, it's going to be a big win for Jovan. Jovan wins 15-3. 15-3 as the answer is Randy Smith. He was 3rd. Somebody requested who are the other guys. Here are the all-time triple-double leaders for your Los Angeles Clippers. I will give you, Andy, $1,000 if you can tell me one of all 3 guys who lead. I will write you a check right now. Don't look
top 3 for the Clippers.
Yeah, the 3 guys who lead.
Odom.
I can give you 2: Lamar Odom and Blake Griffin.
I just said Odom. You didn't even need to give it to me. So
over to your house right now and give you $1,000.
Okay, well, I said Odom, so I feel like you should give me another
I'm
one
giving you
because
both of them. Lamar Odom and Blake Griffin.
Lamar Odom and Blake Griffin. The 3rd would be
Bob Kaufman. Bob Kaufman. Sounds like somebody you meet at high holiday services.
I was going to say, was he the Clippers rabbi who like doubled as their point guard? Like,
Cantor Bob.
No idea who that is.
Again, that's a very Clippers.
The
all-time leading Clippers triple-double guy is a fella named Bob Kaufman. Here we go. Those guys have 7 each. Mark Jackson is tied for 4th at 4. Ron Harper had 3. Chris Paul had 2. He is 6th. And here are your tied for 7th with 1.
Bob Kaufman only played 4 years with the Buffalo Braves.
That was enough.
Although pretty good. I've never heard of this guy. He had a season where he averaged 20, almost 11 rebounds and 4.5 assists. This guy was no joke.
This is when he was racking up the 5 triple doubles.
Yeah, we'll give you, Brian, $1,000 right now if you can tell me Bob Kaufman's nickname.
The Coffee Man. I don't know.
What is Horse, and Ajax.
Nice.
Yeah.
That was Bob Kaufman. Anyway, so here are your tied for 7th. Ken Norman, Elton Brand, Lou Williams, Kawhi Leonard, Danny Manning, Baron Davis, Benoit Benjamin, John Shoemate, Jeff McInnes, Andre Miller, Gary Grant, Pooh Richardson, Derek Anderson, Steve Blake, Swen Nader, love a good Swen Nader, and Michael Brooks. There you go.
I remember the Steve Blake triple-double. That was a big thing that put him on the Lakers' radar when they signed him because he had it against the Lakers. Just throwing that out there.
Right. You're right. Now I remember.
Yes, he did. He had that against the Lakers. It was like one of the last games.
The Cobb. Not a nickname. Pee-wee. They call Bob Kaufman Pee-wee.
That's amazing.
Isn't that stunning that one triple-double puts you on the all-time top 10 list for the Clippers?
That is God. That is you should let the Clippers know this, Jovan. Like you should make sure they're aware of this. Like it might motivate them for what lies ahead. Your mom says shalom.
Yeah.
But seriously, like that's something the Clippers I think need to be aware of in terms of like, just how urgent it is to, get to the Western Conference Finals and actually win a championship. Like, look at your all-time list, man.
You can't have shit like that on your top 10 list. You got to do something about that sort of thing. You got to clean that up. All right. That was really the whole game was designed to get to that stat about the sound.
Oh, snap. From Trojan Williams, Kawhi will have all the Clippers records by the time he leaves in 2022. Real quick before we go, Jovan, do you think there's any concern inside the organization or how big the concern is? Because they gave up a lot to bring in those two, and then the first round pick that they traded to get Marcus Morris. Like, how much concern do you think there actually is that in a year they could end up holding like a really expensive bag?
I think right now it would be relatively low. But with the way that they flamed out, I mean, I wrote, you can make the case this was the biggest playoff collapse in NBA history when considering that they held those leads in the second halves of those games. Not necessarily stakes wise, obviously Warriors Cavs or Warriors Thunder and different other series. But when looking at the fact that they were in control of all 3 of those games at some point and blew it, this might have been the biggest playoff collapse in NBA history. And to have that in year 1, that puts so much pressure on year 2. And I think, I do expect Doc Rivers to be back next season, but if they don't make the conference finals, I don't know if you reevaluate that. I don't know what Kawhi or PG do in free agency at that point. It was supposed to be easiest really in year 1. I mean, we just talked about how deep the West is. Frankly, I think if looking at their path, like, this was theoretically like your easiest path you're going to have over the next few years.
Right.
Again, all these teams are going to get better. Warriors are going to be back. Nets will be there next season. Again, like I think as of right now, it's a low concern. But if you flame out again in round 1 or 2, even losing in the conference finals, I think it would be something that would give them some concern. So I do think there's a lot of pressure on the Clippers going to next season, which is why, even though I think there's a realistic chance they run it back, if they don't, and you see them make drastic changes, I think it's because they realize how short this window could be and how much they need to win next season.
Yeah. I mean, it's amazing the way that pressure forms so quickly. Like, I mean, when I would say they were probably considered the consensus favorite to win it all, at least in the preseason heading into this thing. Whether you looked at like ESPN, The Athletic, all these different places with NBA pundits, and there is going to be a ton of pressure on them. But, at the same time, we don't know what's going to happen with the Lakers. You could have two teams in LA and, with a ton of pressure on them heading into next year. So
whoever says, I've been on this stream a few times and you guys never replied. Well, thank you. Thanks for coming.
There you go.
And we're replying now.
We appreciate it.
Everybody, we're trying, but we do appreciate you coming on, and we'll look for you, and we'll do. Oh, let's see here. All right. Well, I think that's it. That's all we got. Thanks for coming on, man. We really appreciate it. We'll try to do this again sometime, because Clippers fans are sad, and Lakers fans love to hear from about what happened to the Clippers. So, I mean, you've always got a home here. There's sort of no circumstance that they may not want to hear from you right now, but Lakers fans do. Yeah, see, bring back Jovan.
Yeah. Laker fans definitely love roasting me on Twitter, but I embrace it.
As I said from the beginning of this show, Jovan didn't collapse. Like, Jovan's coverage remained fantastic
the entire time.
Yeah, I mean,
thank you.
The team collapsed. Jovan didn't collapse. You need to make sure that there's that layer of separation. Do you have anything to promote? Anything people should be looking for?
I would say just check out my coverage on The Athletic. Today I wrote about Clippers free agency, some of the things I've heard with Trez and Marcus Morris and JaMychal Green, and check out the Clip City podcast if you want to make fun of me some more.
We'll tweet the story out and all that. And again, congratulations on the big win, 15-3. It is very rare for games to be that lopsided.
I got smoked.
Yeah, tomorrow night, Dragonfly Jones will keep the basketball talk going after game
4.
Oh, 4. I'm really bad at counting. After game 4, Friday, Mike Sando and talking NFL, and Monday we're back to basketball with Jason Jones, who covers our friend Luke Walton now up in Sacramento. Is just a great NBA guy for The Athletic. So thanks to everybody for coming, sitting in the chat. Thanks to Jovans Mom and to Jovan. And we'll do it again soon. Talk to you tomorrow.